In the heart of the village of Django, where laughter echoed through the trees and the rivers carried ancient whispers, there was a boy named Omari. He was small, quiet, and different. And for that, he was feared. But fear, when twisted, becomes cruelty. And the children of Django were not kind to him. They called him cursed. They pushed him down. They took his voice and turned it into silence. Until one night, when Omari spoke to the shadows, and the shadows answered. The village of Django was full of life. Children ran through the dirt paths, laughing as they played with wooden toys. Women balanced baskets on their heads, talking as they moved from the market to their homes. The men gathered near the great fire, telling stories of warriors and spirits. The air smelled of roasted maize, fresh river water, and the rich earth beneath their feet. But Omari did not laugh. He did not run. He did not sit near the fire to listen to stories. He walked alone. Omari was different. His skin was darker than the others. His voice was softer. His eyes held something that made people uneasy, something deep, something knowing. The children of Django whispered about him behind his back. He is cursed, they said. He speaks to the spirits. He was born from the shadows. These words followed him like the wind, but Omari never spoke back. He kept his head down, walking through the village, trying to disappear. One afternoon, as Omari sat near the river, tossing small stones into the water, he heard footsteps behind him. He did not turn. He knew who it was. Baraka and his gang. Baraka was tall, strong, and cruel. He was the leader of the village boys, and he had decided long ago that Omari did not belong. Well, Baraka said, standing over him. The shadow boy sits alone again. Omari kept his eyes on the water. He said nothing. Baraka's friends laughed. One of them kicked Omari's basket, sending his few belongings scattering into the dirt. Omari clenched his fists but did not move. Baraka crouched beside him, picking up a small bracelet, the only thing Omari had left from his late mother. He turned it in his hands, smirking. This? He asked. This is all you have? Omari swallowed hard. Baraka chuckled, then stood up and tossed the bracelet into the river. The splash was soft, but to Omari, it was louder than thunder. He jumped up, rushing to the water's edge, eyes wide, searching for it. But the river had already carried it away. Behind him, Baraka and the others laughed. Omari did not cry. He did not shout. He only closed his eyes. The wind shifted. The trees rustled. The water stilled. Something was listening. Omari opened his eyes and turned to Baraka. I will be heard, he said, his voice calm. Baraka's smile faltered for just a second. Then he scoffed, turning away. You will be nothing. Omari watched them leave, their laughter fading into the distance. He turned back to the river, the loss of his mother's bracelet cutting deep into his chest. But as the wind curled around him, pressing gently against his skin, he felt something stir in the forest beyond. Something waiting. Something watching. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky deep red, Omari knew he would not be alone for much longer. The forest called to Omari. It always had. When the village turned against him, when the laughter became cruel, when his mother's bracelet sank beneath the river's surface, he knew where he had to go. Django's children never entered the sacred forest. They were told stories by their elders, warned never to step foot beyond the great tree line. The spirits live there, they whispered. If you go too far, they will take you. They listen when no one else does. That was why Omari went. The moon was high, bathing the land in silver light. Shadows stretched across the ground, but in the forest, they moved differently. The trees murmured in the wind, their branches bending toward him. The air smelled older, heavier, filled with something unseen. Omari stepped forward, careful and quiet, his heart hammering against his ribs. The ground was soft beneath his bare feet, the roots twisting in strange directions. The deeper he walked, the more he felt watched. Not by animals. Not by people. But by something else. The mwench tree stood tall in the distance, its bark darker than the night itself. The elders said it was older than Django, older than the rivers, older than the first stories ever told. Omari stopped before it, staring up at its mighty branches, his breath uneven. "I want to be heard," he whispered. His voice carried through the air like a song no one had ever dared to sing. And the forest answered. The wind shifted. The leaves shivered. The shadows twisted, curling unnaturally, stretching long, then pulling back. Omari did not run. He did not hide. He listened. Then, a whisper. It was not loud. Not human. Not something from the living world. "You have called us." Omari inhaled sharply, his fingers shaking. The voice came from the shadows, wrapping around him like unseen arms. "Now, we will listen." The mwench tree pulsed, just once, as if breathing. And Omari knew. The forest had awakened. And nothing would ever be the same again. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Omari walked through the village the next morning, his heart still pounding with the echoes of the forest. He had called to something beyond the world of men, and the spirits had answered. Though nothing had changed in Django, not yet, Omari felt different. But Baraka did not care for spirits. He cared only for cruelty. Omari had barely made it past the market when he saw them waiting for him. Baraka and his gang, standing in a crooked line, blocking his path. He stopped, his fingers curling into fists. Baraka grinned. "Shadow boy," he said, stepping forward, arms crossed. "We haven't finished with you yet." Omari kept his voice steady. "Leave me alone." Baraka laughed, loud and mocking. His friends joined him, their amusement filling the air. "Leave you alone?" Baraka taunted. "You think the spirits will protect you?" Omari didn't answer. He saw the challenge in Baraka's eyes. The village boys weren't afraid of stories. They weren't afraid of whispers or warnings from the elders. But they should have been. Baraka shoved Omari hard. He stumbled but did not fall. Another boy grabbed his arm, twisting it painfully before shoving him again. Omari clenched his teeth, refusing to cry out. Then Baraka grabbed his tunic and yanked him forward, speaking low enough that only Omari could hear. "No one cares about you," he hissed. "No one listens to the cursed." Omari's pulse roared in his ears. But Baraka wasn't finished. He grabbed a handful of dirt and smeared it across Omari's face. "You belong in the ground," he spat, shoving him backward. Omari hit the earth hard. His breath left him in a sharp gasp. He pushed himself onto his elbows, staring up at the boys, his chest tight. Then, the wind shifted. Baraka smirked, stepping back. "Stay down, shadow boy." And with that, they turned and walked away. Omari didn't move. The air was thick. Heavy. Different. His skin tingled. The forest was listening. And before the next sun rose, Baraka would understand what it meant to be truly afraid. Baraka's screams shattered the silence of Django. Villagers jolted awake, rushing from their huts, torches flickering as confusion spread like wildfire. The night was meant to be quiet, peaceful, but now, it was filled with something unnatural. Baraka stumbled out of his hut, his breath wild, his skin pale despite the darkness. He clutched his chest, his hands shaking, his eyes darting toward the shadows that no longer followed him. His shadow was gone. The others, the boys who had stood beside him, were waking to the same horror. Their voices failed them. They could not speak. And their shadows did not stay connected to their bodies. The villagers gasped, stepping back, murmuring prayers beneath their breath. Some clutched charms of protection, others whispered offerings to the spirits. The elders pushed forward, studying the boys who had tormented Omari just a day before. "The spirits have come," Elder Okan murmured. They have heard a voice that should never have been silenced. Chief Jabari stepped forward, his stance strong, but even he hesitated before looking directly at Baraka. What happened? Baraka could not answer. His throat was sealed. His voice stolen. Just as he had tried to steal Omari's. The others trembled, gripping their arms, their legs, their own bodies, as if trying to force their shadows back into place, but it was too late. The air was thick, heavy, filled with the presence of something unseen. Then, Omari stepped forward. The villagers turned, watching as the boy, always quiet, always walking alone, stood before the ones who had tormented him. He was calm. His expression unreadable. His hands traced the edges of his tunic, feeling the absence of the bracelet that had once belonged to his mother. But he did not look at the river. He looked at Baraka. And the wind spoke. Low. Whispering. Twisting through the village like the echoes of a forgotten song. You did not listen, it murmured. The mwench tree shivered in the distance, its ancient branches bending slightly toward Omari, as if watching. The elders turned to the oracle, waiting, fearing, knowing. And she lifted her staff, pressing it into the earth. The spirits have made their judgment, she said softly. The ones who silenced a voice will now understand what it means to be unheard. Omari did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply watched. And Baraka, his hands shaking, his throat burning, understood this was not vengeance. This was understanding. The village of Django would never be the same. The bullies had their voices back, their shadows returned, but something had changed. They walked differently now, slower, more aware of the world around them. When they passed Omari, they did not mock him. They did not sneer or whisper behind his back. They lowered their heads, their guilt woven into every step. Omari did not speak to them. He did not need to. They had heard the spirits. They had felt what it meant to be silenced. And now, they would never use their voices as weapons again. That night, Omari returned to the mwench tree. The village was quieter than usual, as if Django itself was listening. The stars flickered overhead, and the wind curled softly around him, carrying no judgment, only peace. He knelt before the mighty tree, tracing the earth, feeling the weight of everything that had come before. And then, he played the drum. Not in anger. Not in sorrow. But in thankfulness. The rhythm carried into the night, soft but strong, weaving into the wind, into the branches, into the very fabric of the land. He played for the spirits. For his mother. For himself. For the lesson that had finally been heard. And as the moon bathed the land in silver light, the shadows beneath the mwench tree danced, not in fear, but in harmony. Omari had been heard. And now, Django would always listen. The years passed. Django changed. The bullies grew older, their voices tempered by understanding. When they had children of their own, they told stories, not of their victories, but of their lesson. They spoke of the boy who walked alone, of the shadows that listened, of the silence that taught them more than words ever could. And Omari? He was never forgotten. The mwench tree stood tall in the heart of the forest, and when the wind danced through its branches, the village knew he was still there. Not as a shadow. Not as a spirit bound by vengeance. But as a rhythm woven into the land itself. And when children played their drums beneath the silver moon, they could feel him in the beats. Listening. Smiling. Reminding the world that some voices, once silenced, will echo forever. Omari's story is not just about shadows and silence, it is about power. The power of a single voice. The weight of understanding. The lesson that those who ignore pain will one day feel it themselves. The spirits did not come to punish. They came to teach. And now, Django will never forget. Every drumbeat, every gust of wind, every whisper in the trees carries his story, the tale of a boy who spoke to shadows and a village that finally listened. And maybe, if you stand in the quiet of night and truly listen, you'll hear him too. Omari's journey was one of silence turned into strength, and now, the question remains. Who in your world is waiting to be heard? What voices have been ignored for too long? Will you break the silence, or wait for the shadows to speak? The spirits do not forget. Neither should you. Share this story. Pass the rhythm forward. Never ignore the quiet voices, they are louder than you think. Subscribe for more amazing story.